Welcome, everybody, to the Ever-Evolving Truth. This is Friday when you're hearing this, so we hope that you all had a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. We are recording this on Wednesday during the day, so we are missing a couple people. Greg has to work, Courtney has to work, Wags is busy, I believe, with kid stuff. So we have Mounts with us, Abby doing her best Greg impression in his recording room. But he did not allow her to turn on the lights, the flashing lights or anything. He reserved those for himself.
And the jacket. He won't let her wear it.
Right, the jacket's just hanging there staring at us. And then Leah, who's recording in front of the most Leah Christmas tree I've ever seen in my entire life.
I was going to comment too.
Yeah, it's pink with silver balls, but it looks like she hasn't gotten, either she's too short to reach the top or just gave up halfway through.
That would be my
Either
son.
one would be.
That would be Enzo decorating without permission. So this is what we have.
Hey, he did a really good job. Tell Enzo, great job on the tree.
He did. I also have an 8-foot dragon in one of the rooms of my house that blows up because I got a dragon for my birthday. Yay!
So we didn't want to take off the entire week. That's why we're doing this now, because obviously the holiday's coming up. And it just so happens there's a lot of trending news. So let's dive right into the trending news headlines I have here. It's a lot of interesting stuff. I think we have officially gotten to the point in society where movies predict the future. I don't know if you guys heard this, but NASA, I believe it was just last night, launched a spacecraft to test asteroid defense concept. NASA launches a spacecraft Tuesday night on a mission to smash into an asteroid and test whether it would be possible to knock a speeding space rock off the course if one were to threaten Earth. Now, if you know movies at all, you know that this is one of the ideas that they presented in the movie Armageddon. It was also shot down as ridiculous. I believe Billy Bob Thornton, who was the head of NASA, said, "We have the smartest people in the world thinking this shit up, and this is what we came up with." Thoughts?
Well, I don't worry about an asteroid colliding with Earth on a daily basis or anything, but does it provide a little bit of relief that like one of the major catastrophes that we have no control over that could end life as we know it, that they're coming up with some kind of solution for it, gives me some kind of solace? I mean, I think it's interesting.
I agree. I just worry that, this is just a step away from a Death Star. America's going to come up with a Death Star and start blowing up planets eventually. But this is useful.
So, go ahead, Bounce.
No, I was just going to say, like Gabby said, it's nice to know that they're thinking about it. But of all the shit that's out in space.
Well, let me be pessimistic here, because I think we've all heard this line, but like 1% of the NASA budget goes to actually monitoring objects that could potentially hit Earth. So that leaves 99% of the rest of the sky that we don't know what's coming. There could be one coming at us right now. My other fear is that because they're starting to think about this, is it because they're afraid that something's coming in our lifetime that they're going to have to worry about?
Well, that was my next question. Like, is there a reason? Did they say anything? Did they say it's because of asteroid number whatever?
No, I don't think they would either, because it would cause mass hysteria.
I think there was something coming that was going to be close in not like close, but close enough that they can see it. I was reading. Yeah, and so maybe that's why they're worried about it now. But
so the part in Armageddon that I'm talking about, they obviously they're under the gun, right? They have this asteroid barreling towards Earth, and it's going to kill the entire. They call it a planet killer or whatever. And they're throwing out ideas, and everybody's saying, why don't we fly a spaceship into it and knock it off course? Why don't we fire a bunch of nukes at it and try to knock it off course? And then the smartest guy in the world was like, all you're doing, think about a firecracker in your hand, right? If you put it in your hand and light it and don't close your fist, it'll just fly off. It might burn you. It might leave a mark, something like that. It might hurt, but it's not going to blow your hand up. Now, if you close your fist around it and light the firework and it explodes. Now your hand blows off, right? So his thing was they had to land on the asteroid, drill, drop a nuke in there, and explode it from the inside out, because the amount of force that this thing is coming out with how fast it's traveling, banging something into it isn't going to work. So I don't know. I feel like.
Well, did it say
know.
how they're testing it? Did they say like what they're testing it on or anything like that?
I'm sure it does. It's just, I'm just reading the headline. I didn't look too much into the actual story yet.
I was just relieved.
But I think they're crashing it into an asteroid. That's what I got from this.
I was relieved to find out recently that there's not a black hole big enough to suck the Earth into anywhere near us. So that's not something we have to worry about.
That's a relief. I trust the NASA scientists to do their thing with the numbers, and that they'll be able to figure something out. Meanwhile, we're sitting on tons of nukes that are definitely going to destroy us before an asteroid does. So, right. I mean, it's a fun little project, but
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Or a virus, or the gigantic volcano under Yellowstone.
Or that,
all things that I think can destroy humans before an asteroid. However, I will say, I believe, I'm not a scientist by any means. I barely passed it, but I think the idea is if you catch it far enough away and you move it just a little bit, it changes the trajectory over the course of a large area enough to move it. But again, my fear is that we're only monitoring 1% of the sky. The other 99%, if we catch one that's too close, we don't have a contingency plan for that, and then maybe we have to go with the makers of Armageddon.
You think that instead of go through all the options they gave, like landing a solar thing to glide it
away? Again, yeah, I don't know.
Down the road.
So we'll save us all. That's gonna happen.
So officials say that Brian Laundrie fatally shot himself in the head. Brian Laundrie, who was found dead last month in a Florida swamp, shot himself in the head, officials announced Tuesday. Laundrie has been the subject of a manhunt for more than a month as investigators search for clues in the slaying of his girlfriend, Gabby Petito, during their cross-country van trip together. So we have a clip out on Brian Laundrie, and we've been getting some feedback on it, and there seems to be, I'm not going to say an overwhelming amount, but there seems to be this group of people that believe that he's still alive.
Yes. Oh my God. Those people need to stop. Just shut up. Why would anyone cover for this kid? I don't understand why they would what is the point of that conspiracy? It's driving me insane. Like, why would the police say, oh, he's dead, and let him get away? I don't understand where it comes from.
I just think there's a group of people, and it's conspiracy theorists across the board, who feel like by not believing things at face value and thinking there's more insidious things happening beneath the surface that we're not aware of, that they somehow know more than everyone else, and it makes them special.
Well,
yeah. And I think that's what's happening here. It's a pretty, if you look at the case on face value, it makes a lot of sense. A young man and a young woman were in a volatile relationship. They had a history of abuse. Things got out of hand. He killed her, couldn't live with himself, and shot himself.
He's a coward, ladies and gentlemen. This is a man who beat up his girlfriend. Any man that beats up a girl who's 100 pounds soaking fucking wet. And if you watch that video, and we've talked about the case at length, if you watch the video where they're stopped by the cops, I mean, she is covering for him. She's taking the blame. She is a victim of domestic violence ongoing, right? He's a coward that beats up a woman, and he left the day that it was announced that she was missing. He didn't kill himself because he couldn't live with what he did. He killed himself because he was afraid to go to jail. This is the kind of person we're dealing with. Of course he shot himself in the head. He is not alive. He's a fucking coward, and the world is better without him in it.
And for the people who bring up the fact that Gabby Petito was also violent, it wasn't just him. She would hit him too. If And that's unacceptable. But if you are a man in that situation and you have a violent woman that you're dealing with, if you for 1 second feel like you could be violent back, it is your responsibility to remove yourself from the situation and probably from the relationship. Because I have to imagine if someone was getting violent with me, I would want to get violent back. But if you are a larger, stronger man in that situation, and it could lead to serious injury or death, that responsibility is still on you.
Right.
In my opinion.
I don't even know if I buy that she was violent back. That's what abused women do. They take the blame. It's a known fact. And I think if she did hit him, it was in self-defense. I mean, I don't know.
And that's what abusers do, is they blame the other person. That's her fault. You know, that it's her fault that I'm violent. She was violent first.
I wonder if any of the doubting comes from how fast that went away, like that story. Because I remember I had to look it up a couple times after, because it was like they said they found his remains, but then you really didn't hear anything about it afterwards. So I wasn't even sure if it was real until I mean, I took the time to do my own research after, but like after they discovered his body, then they were like,
well, and there was that whole thing that like the parents found it, but they found the dry bag. They didn't find the body. Folks, stop saying that the parent, like that it was planted, and all of that is ridiculous. No, it was swamplands, and that's how it happened. Sorry, my puppy feels like playing in here. I apologize for the barking. I'm going to mute now.
My fear, Abby, to go back to what you said about this group of people that think they're special for their conspiracy theory thoughts. My fear, most of all, here is that it seems to be a growing group of people. It seems to be a very large portion, and that makes me very scared, because they're saying, well, there was no suicide note, there was no gun. Well, just because it wasn't in the headline article that you read doesn't mean that they didn't find a gun. It's just they haven't reported it yet. They haven't reported it yet.
Right.
But this idea that every media outlet is trying to mislead you and distract you. I just got into an argument with a guy yesterday about, he posted this meme that said the flu kills 650,000 people worldwide every year. Right. Now, that may or may not be true. I know it can be anywhere between 20 and 60,000 in America. So that number could be right? It doesn't matter. He was posting it as a direct argument against COVID being a real thing. So I simply posted from Johns Hopkins University, their website, not a media outlet, Johns Hopkins, the #1 medical research university in the entire world. And their number is worldwide over 5 million people. If you break that up over 2 years, it's 2.5 million per year. That is more than double the amount of the flu. It's not even a comparison. And he kept saying to me, you're being misled. The media is out to get you. And I'm like, what fucking media? I am not posting it from CNN. I'm not posting these numbers from anything else. This is direct from, and then I'm like, what evidence do you have that these numbers are wrong? And he didn't have any.
Right.
He's like, the number I posted is probably wrong too. Well, then what the fuck are we doing?
Right.
What the fuck are we doing? You're just not going to believe anything ever again?
I was
just
watching,
for the sake of not believing it? It's pure insanity.
I was watching some documentary on the flat earth people when we did our episode on that. And
was it Beyond the Curve?
Yes, Netflix? It was hard to watch. You're just like, these people are crazy.
Yes.
But the thing that I found so interesting about it is the people who were like the most prominent flat earthers, once they got enough of a following and they were never mainstream, but as far as like the Flat Earth Society goes, they were becoming mainstream in that community. And once they got some prominence, all of a sudden they were looked at with skepticism. Like, oh, you guys are getting some traction now and some credibility. You must have been planted. Like NASA must have planted you.
Of course.
To like manipulate us in our own community. So it's like they just literally don't trust anyone who has any level of credibility, even credibility just within their own circle of conspiracy
Who hurt
theorists.
you? Who hurt you?
Exactly.
Right.
Can you imagine living a life like that? Like,
No.
and it goes across the board. Like, even with like people don't believe doctors,
Mhm.
but they believe a meme on Facebook. Can we
Right.
stop this, please? Can we stop?
I know.
It's dangerous.
It's not going to, that's the thing. It's not going to stop. It's going to get
You're right.
worse.
You're right, Jeff. It feels like it's getting worse.
And it's definitely social media driven. So unless social media goes away, we know that's not going to happen. Or unless social media, well, and it's too late. Like even like the fact checks that Facebook put on there, that nobody believes the fact checks either. Like, what
Right.
do you believe? Who do you believe?
Right.
And yeah, the flat Earth thing, like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, this is a large group of people that were previously sane who just decided, I don't believe that the Earth is round anymore.
Yes.
And a lot
Because
of
some
it
group on Facebook showed me a bunch of pictures.
a lot of it was originally like biblically related, and now it's not. Now they're trying the pseudo. It's insanity. We should do flat Earth again because I think it's hilarious.
Oh, I don't know if I have it in me, Leah.
Johnny, what's his name?
Johnny
Cut
Lust.
ties with us. Johnny Lust wants nothing to do with us.
He's
Aw,
friends with
Johnny
AJ on Facebook.
He's friends with your son.
Yeah. I think he thought it was me, but
that's
Johnny
nice.
Lust. Oh man. So here's some, I don't know, depressing news. The Santa experience this year is a mix of lapse distancing. Santa's back this year, but he pleads caution as he continues to tiptoe through the pandemic. Be smart, be caring. If you have the tiniest tickle in your throat, the tiniest feeling, worry about yourself and worry about everybody else. And know Santa will always be there next year, said 57-year-old Kevin Chesney, who's been donning the big red suit since he was a kid. So I think the thing behind this article is that when you go to see Santa at the mall, he's like behind a wall and you have to sit on a bench next to him. You can't sit on the lap. I'm sure there's people that are outraged about this.
I think it's perfectly normal. Does anybody else think it's creepy to put your kids on a strange man's
on a
lap
stranger's
and take a
lap
picture?
and watch them scream? Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
never done it. My kids have never sat on Santa's lap.
Get out.
Because
Never?
of that reason, Joanna thought it was creepy. I mean, I did it my whole life, you know.
Right.
Probably
We
2 years ago,
waited.
I sat on Santa's lap.
We waited until Jack wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But I
that
never
was nice.
forced him to do it when he was like 1 or 2 years old because I was afraid that he was going to be scared that he's being put on the stranger's lap.
Mm-hmm.
And Charlie
That has to-
hasn't done it.
That has to be traumatic.
I would think so.
Everybody's walked to the mall and like witnessed a kid screaming bloody murder.
Yeah.
And the parent being like, "Come on, I just get the picture," and then being pissed off. At the little
Exactly.
helmet, you know?
Leah's
I was
guilty.
that parent. Totally that
Well-
parent with the girls.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame the parent necessarily, but like, let's just take a step back and realize what we're doing. It's the same thing as like forcing kids to hug grandma and grandpa.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
forcing them to do it is a little extreme. Like, asking them if they want to do it, asking them if they feel comfortable to do it, and if they do, then yes. But I mean, kids, from everything that's come out recently, we have to start teaching our kids boundaries, their own personal boundaries at a younger age. Like
Mhm.
start from, day one, essentially. And there's a lot of good research out there to show that that's beneficial. So if you're not going to force them to hug grandma and grandpa, why would you force them to sit on some dude's lap? And I also think, looking back on it, being that my son is 20 and he no longer sits on Santa's lap,
Are you sure?
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm 100% sure. At least I think I am. But, the idea of Santa Claus should be like magical, right? So when you see him at the mall and make him sit there and then have to come up with an excuse as to why he's in this mall and not making toys and that kind of, it just makes the whole lie harder.
It does. You're absolutely right about that. It definitely fucks with it. It's better Santa just maybe shouldn't be in malls anymore. Stop. It's not
And
fun.
then you have to be like, well, that's not the real Santa. But why? Like, I always think as a kid, I remember writing a letter to Santa, and then my mom would write a letter back, and it would come in the mail. Like she would mail it to herself.
Mhm.
That was exciting. That was like, oh my God.
We mailed letters to Santa. I forget if it was last year or the year before, but our local mail. Why am I
Post office.
post office. Jesus Christ. We're recording earlier and my brain is working worse.
I know.
But our post office mailed a letter back from Santa. I was not expecting it, but we got it in the mailbox, and I was like, Jack, we got a letter back from Santa. How cool. But also, side note, so many of those mall Santas and Easter bunnies are sketchy as hell, too.
Oh,
Like, they don't look like Santa. They look like Santa on crack.
And the Easter bunny costumes are something straight out of Donnie Darko, you know?
Yeah,
it's like
horrifying.
My kids will
faces
not
on
go
them.
near it. They won't go near the Easter bunny. They're still at 11 and 10, and the girls are terrified. Enzo has never been with the Easter bunny. They won't do it.
The Easter bunny's stupid. Can we stop making up a fictional character for every fucking holiday?
Well, the Easter bunny prominent in the Bible. That's why.
Yes,
right. Jesus and the Easter bunny came out of the tomb together, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they dropped off. They hid eggs. Yeah.
Right after the fish and bread,
there was an Easter egg hunt.
He pulled out
that was just
the bunnies for all.
If I remember the exact text, that's how God apologized for the First Testament, by sending the Easter bunny and Jesus to hide eggs and give out candy to rot their teeth.
Sorry, I murdered you all. Here's some candy and eggs.
Sorry, I sent that flood. Oh my. Prince Andrew accusations left out of Epstein-Maxwell case. When Jeffrey Epstein's longtime companion, Ghislaine Maxwell, goes on trial next week. Hear that. The Kyle Rittenhouse trial was not a distraction from the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. It starts next week.
Mm-hmm.
And we will be covering it.
Yes, we will. Is that a conspiracy that people are saying? You're kidding me, right?
Nope.
Oh my God. Open a newspaper, people. Like Google. Wow.
That's who's trying to distract you. The newspaper.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The accuser who captivated the public most with claims she was trafficked to Britain's Prince Andrew and other prominent men won't be part of the case. This is something that we obviously have to look into, but just on its surface, it sounds, why wouldn't? Unless the scope of the case doesn't involve her.
It depends what the actual charges against her are, and if testimony from that victim is relevant to her particular charges. And I'm not going to speak on it because I don't know those details.
The one thing I will say, when we go back, if you go back and listen to the Epstein episode that we did, we do briefly touch on the Prince Andrew situation. Mm-hmm. As the resident royal obsessed person, I was obsessed with it. She was not a minor. She was not a minor at any point that she was with Ghislaine Maxwell or Jeffrey Epstein, and she was not a minor when she was sleeping with Prince Andrew. So I wonder if that's why. Technically, there was no crime committed. I mean, she did it willingly and she was of age. So that's speculation. I don't know, but that would be my assumption.
I would still think she's a victim, and there is a crime there because she was trafficked.
Right.
But yeah, if the scope is around the charges, as far as child sex trafficking, and she wasn't a minor at the time, then certainly that would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
You would think that she would have inside information, though, possibly about other girls who were underage at the time. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So Kyle Rittenhouse had his big interview with Tucker Carlson on Monday night, and apparently one of his quotes was, Rittenhouse tells Fox News, "I'm not a racist person. I back Black Lives Matter." Kyle Rittenhouse, who was acquitted on charges stemming from killing two men and wounding another during the unrest that followed the shooting of a black man by a white police officer, said in a wide-ranging interview that aired Monday night, he's not a racist person and supports Black Lives Matter movement.
Okay,
I actually have the clip here if you want me to play it.
I was going to say, did anybody watch this interview? Because I have so many thoughts on it because I watched the whole thing.
So I didn't watch it yet, and I'm going to. I got my dose of Kyle Rittenhouse watching the hours of testimony he gave on trial, and I have made my feelings about Tucker Carlson very clear. So I was not emotionally prepared to listen to that whole interview yet, but I'm going to.
Maybe we can watch it and either do a deep dive on it or just do like a special half-hour video for a breakdown of it for YouTube or something like that.
Yeah. When I get into the story that I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the episode, I do want to come back to this and talk about Kyle Rittenhouse, because if you take what he says in this interview at face value, I think it would be amazing if he used this new platform that he has to talk about criminal justice reform and actually shed light on these other cases where people did not get the fair trial that he got.
That would be what a truly good person would do. Like
But
if he
he's
was
not gonna
truly
do that.
believed, but like if his intentions were truly good going to that protest, then that's something that he would do. But I don't have a lot of faith in that.
I don't either, but it remains to be seen. Based on what he said in this interview, it's possible that he could. But
if you watch
right now,
watch the entire interview, I can't wait for you guys to watch it because I was watching it. Originally, it was announced that he was going to be on the show, I believe, Friday.
Mhm.
And then it was pushed back till Monday. And when I watched it, I immediately thought, oh, because they needed to coach him and tell him what to say beforehand. He is robotic.
yes,
He does not say anything that you could tell his brain isn't working in the set. It's memorization. The way he speaks, you could see he's memorizing what to say. He doesn't know anything. I mean, he's a kid, but he's also, I'm sorry, he's an asshole. Like the kid is an asshole. And now he's getting congressional internship offers and shit like that. Like this is not going to end well for anybody. I don't think for this kid. He's a martyr now.
Mhm.
And you need to see it. But if you're going to play the clip, I think maybe you can get a sense of what I'm saying with the clip.
I already know exactly what you're saying because I got the exact same impression from watching the testimony he gave.
Yes.
Everything sounded like a recitation of what the defense team told him he needed to say on the stand.
Mhm.
And there was, listening to everyone else's testimony, everyone was able to speak in a very like normal way where they were just telling their version of events, telling their version of the facts. And there was something so strange about the way Kyle Rittenhouse spoke.
Mhm.
The emotions did not seem genuine, and I'm not even talking about that horrible crying display that he did. It seemed practiced and coached, and like whatever emotions he was trying to put on while he was talking were totally fake.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And I did see clips other than the one that I have of the interview with Tucker Carlson, and he speaks the exact same way in that interview. So,
do you want to play the clip now, or you want to wait until did you have it for your article specifically?
I can play it now.
Okay.
And we can reference it later. Let's see.
While you're getting that ready, real quick, I just wanted to mention, because we're running out of time here, trans Netflix workers drop labor complaint, but one resigns over the Dave Chappelle thing. Good, because Dave Chappelle's not transphobic, and neither is Netflix, especially based off of this special. So I'm glad that's over. And also, 2 Fox contributors quit, citing irresponsible voices. 2 writers who have been paid contributors to Fox News Channel have resigned, citing Tucker Carlson's Patriot Purge documentary. I mean, good for them, but this is kind of like the whole Trump thing, where like he would force people to resign and then hire and appoint worse people. So who are they going to place them with? People that are worse and that are just going to toe the company line. So these people were essentially like a barrier between the ridiculous conspiracy theories that Tucker Carlson peddles and some sort of truth. It's like Shep Smith and what's the other guy who's somewhat credible? Shep Smith left, obviously, but at least he would
Shep,
call
I
out.
can't think of anyone else other than
Chris
Shep.
Wallace.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess he's all right.
I said somewhat.
All right. Are you guys ready?
Yes.
Yep.
And it's up.
Yep.
I'm not a racist person. I support the BLM movement. I support peacefully demonstrating. And I believe there needs to be change. I believe there's a lot of prosecutorial misconduct, not just in my case, but in other cases. And it's just amazing to see how much a prosecutor can take advantage of somebody. Like if they did this to me, imagine what they could have done to a person of color who doesn't maybe have the resources I do or is not widely publicized like my case. I'm not a racist.
That I see exactly what you mean. That is That would be amazing if he actually did what he should do in this situation, but he won't.
I would completely change my opinion about him if he actually took this opportunity. I mean, he is being given a platform that most people could only dream of. And if he is willing to use it for good, my opinion of him will completely change.
I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt.
I mean, let's wait and see what he does, if he does anything.
Because there's no evidence that he is racist, right? Like there's no.
Really?
What
I don't
evidence?
know. I don't know.
He shot 3 white people.
He did shoot 3 white people, but he went there to, protect businesses during Black Lives Matter protests.
That doesn't make you racist.
If you watch the way he talks too, like you were talking about his facial expressions, there's a point where he like scowls and shakes his head no. And look, I'm not a expert by any means, but they say that it's an unconscious response. It's almost like he doesn't agree with what he's saying there. That's how I feel. Because I think he's coached. I think everything he says is coached. I think somebody told him to say that.
I do think it's interesting, though, that he went on Tucker Carlson and said, I support BLM. I have to imagine all or the overwhelming majority of Tucker Carlson's audience is not going to like that. So it was interesting. I found it to be extremely interesting at the very least.
It was definitely interesting. And what he says, although true, he did not experience the prosecutors abusing their power. The prosecutors got destroyed in that case.
They did. There was a point at though which, and I thought that it might have led to a mistrial. The prosecution was making the case that Kyle giving his testimony, like the only testimony he gave in the entire case, was after everyone else had already spoken and given their testimony. And the prosecution was trying to make the case that he was able to tailor his testimony based on what everyone else had already said. And it was completely against his Fifth Amendment right to remain quiet until he was ready to speak, so as not to incriminate himself. So the fact that the prosecution tried to make that case was against his constitutional rights. So there were instances of prosecutorial misconduct, for sure.
No, there were, for sure.
Well, it worked out in his favor, I guess is what I'm saying. Whereas if he were a black man, he would have been found guilty.
Yes. And that's exactly what he's saying. The question is he being genuine in his comments, or is he saying what he thinks the audience wants to hear? And that's what remains to be seen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, let's take a break, and we will come back, and we will get deeper into some articles that we have picked out. Support for The Ever-Evolving Truth is brought to you by Manscaped. Who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming? Champions of the world? Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th-generation trimmer, the Lawn Mower 4.0. You heard that right, the 4.0. Join over 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. With this exclusive offer for you, 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code TEAT20. That's TEET20 at manscaped.com. Imagine shaving with a sleek, well-designed, and optimized trimmer that makes shaving time your favorite time in the bathroom. I'm one of the first people to try the new 4.0, and I'm blown away by the performance. The craftsmanship and the details on the 4.0 are next level. Guys, I used to just trim my balls with a $20 trimmer from CVS. And I'm not going to lie, the nicks and cuts made it so that I really wouldn't want to do it that often.
Jeff, I can sympathize with you because at one point as a younger man, I didn't even go with the cheap shaver from CVS. I actually took literal manicure scissors and turned my pubic patch into a crotch cactus. I literally I literally could not. It felt like my dick was dingling against a pincushion all day long, and it became very, very uncomfortable to the point where I never ever shaved down there again. And you might have thought that would have meant that eventually when some lucky lady got in there and got to the goods, that it might have looked like I was halfway to giving birth to some kind of a furry creature, but I am not that kind of guy. I'm kind of a hairless cat in that way. I'm very, very, I'm very mangy. I'm very sparse as far as my hair goes. So it's not that big of a problem. But real quick, before you continue, I got to tell you this. Abby's going to be excited. I had these terrible, I'd call them ugly little man boob pubes. They were little straggly hairs that came out of my, my chestal, breastal region. And I took this lawnmower 4.0. I took this puppy and I took it to the man boob pubes, and my God, I look like from the waist up, with maybe a couple of less abs, I look like Michelangelo's David. I am sleek, I am light, and I am now ready for prime time in the bedroom.
Well, ladies, let me ask you this. I mean, you prefer a man who's manscaped, right?
Oh,
sure.
For sure.
So, and you know what? It's proven that as a man, if you do some manscaping, you will get laid 100% more times in your life than if you don't. Did you know that?
Absolutely. A lot more.
I just made it up. That's not actually true. But I will tell you this: it makes you feel 100% more confident when you do a little trimming down there. And Manscaped has engineered the ultimate groin and body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and incredibly comfortable grooming experience. Their fourth-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents. Thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology, I now feel confident shaving my boys. This upgraded trimmer includes a multifunction on-off switch that can engage a travel lock. It also gives you the ability to turn on a 4000K LED spotlight on and off when you needed it for more precise shave. I tell you what I did. I wanted to see how well this worked. I shaved him in the dark. Not a single cut.
Stop! You're such a liar.
Jeff, how did you look in that light?
I looked great, but I just wanted to test out the 4000K LED spotlight just to say that I did it. The Lawnmower 4.0 even allows you to customize your trim through additional guard lengths with sizes 1 through 4. Did I mention wireless charging? The new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which can help battery length last longer. I know that we all just despise the length of batteries out there, so the fact that we have a longer lasting battery here is amazing. Great feature. Men, if you've been shaving with the same nut trimmer on your face, you've been doing it wrong.
That's for sure.
No person wants to end up with pubes in their mouth. That's an absolute factuality. It's time to get your own ball hair and body trimmer with Manscaped to make me time the best time and enhance your confidence with some nice smooth boys.
Ow.
Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code TEAT20 at manscaped.com. Again, 20% off with the code TEAT20 at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you.
I can tell you, Jeff, as a hairy gentleman, I need all of that battery life. From the waist down, clean as a baby's bottom. I felt like a surgeon with that thing.
I don't even know if I know what electromagnetic induction means, but it sounds pretty fucking cool. Wouldn't you say, Mounts?
You can feel the difference with that electromagnetic.
Do you think women can use it? Like, is it equally usable for JJs as your balls?
Absolutely. I would say, as a smaller gentleman, it's almost like I'm shaving a vagina.
but ladies, get your own. We don't need to share with our hairy men.
Yes.
Oh, that's for damn sure.
Definitely
Again,
get your own.
Go to manscaped.com, use the code TEAT20 to get 20% off and free worldwide shipping. Welcome back to the Ever-Evolving Truth, our second segment here. First up, Mounts, you have an article for us?
Yes, I do.
Take it away.
Sorry, typing in the time. All right. I thought this would make an interesting discussion. I read this article from the Yahoo News. Jury holds pharmacies responsible for their role in an opioid crisis. So
I love this.
So in Ohio, 2 counties, a federal jury said Tuesday in a verdict that would set the tone for the U.S. city and county governments that want to hold pharmacies accountable for their roles, found the CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart pharmacies recklessly distributed massive amounts of pain pills. Lake County and Trumbull counties blamed the 3 chain pharmacies for not stopping the flood of pills that caused hundreds of overdose deaths and cost each of the 2 counties about $1 billion. He compared the pharmacies dispensing to a gumball machine. Now they will decide the damages. The federal judge will decide the damages in the spring, how much they'll have to pay. But it's the first time that these companies completed a trial to defend themselves without like settling out of court.
Mhm.
So
That's interesting.
yeah, it says the law requires pharmacies to be diligent in dealing drugs. This case should be a wake-up call, and the failure will not be accepted. The attorney for the county said. Now, the pharmacies themselves said they should be looking at the doctors. The doctors are the ones that prescribe the pills. But then the judge in this case, which I don't have his name, said that these pharmacies are blaming everyone but themselves. So,
Are the doctors being held accountable too?
not in this lawsuit.
Interesting. I don't know. I mean, do I think that the pharmacies should have some kind of responsibility? Yes, but if the doctors are the ones writing the prescription, I feel like they are the ones primarily responsible because the pharmacy's only real job is to fulfill the prescription written by the doctor.
So that's not necessarily the case. Now,
Okay.
the law was very different. It has changed since the opioid epidemic has become an actual thing and people have noticed it. But as someone that was part of that, I can definitely say that I was able to call my pharmacy and be like, oh, I'm out. And they would refill them without a doctor's permission, a certain amount.
Wow. Okay.
And that was in the early 2000s. And then when I stopped getting prescriptions from my doctor and I started getting them from the street, the people I was dealing with knew pharmacists. And they would wait for the shipment. What pharmacies would do is there would be shady pharmacists. I'm not saying this is what happened in Ohio, but I would assume on some level it is. The pharmacists would order more than they, need, I guess, and then they would give so many to the dealers, and then they would sell them on the street, and the pharmacist would get a kickback. That was happening left, right, and center in the early to mid 2000s. The law has changed now to the point where when I had my son in 2013, I was prescribed after my C-section Percocet, and they wouldn't fill it for me. My doctor had to call and talk to them and explain to them that I needed it for surgical reasons. It is very hard now to do that. Back then it was not. And the pharmacies were just, it was that like Dr. Feelgood would even, there were doctors that had relationships with pharmacists and they knew that this doctor was writing a bogus script and they would fill it anyway. That was happening too.
I guess what I'm wondering is, going forward with this lawsuit, are they going to be held accountable for just fulfilling prescriptions, even if they knew that there was abuse happening? Or was there actual predatory behavior going on to make money off of these addicts?
I think there was actual predatory behavior. Now, we would have to do a lot more research, but my gut instinct is yes. And I know you can't base everything on your own personal experience, but in my personal experience, there were definite pharmacists that were making money off of addicts for sure.
It wouldn't, yes, we would need to dig further into it, but I think any time that there's money to be made, there are predatory people out there willing to take advantage. So it wouldn't surprise me in the least.
And if it was happening here, Ohio is like the epicenter for the opiate epidemic. So I would assume it's pretty egregious in that state.
I think you know, you have to applaud that this is a step, you know, holding the people responsible accountable, but it's a small step because this, you know, you can blame the doctors, and you should, because as doctors they should know the nature of what they're prescribing and how addictive it is, because the pharmaceutical companies that made them knew how addictive they were and pushed them on doctors. These pharmaceutical reps can hand out perks, take doctors out to lunch, push this pill, push that pill, push this pill, and it's just like nobody thought, like, what are the repercussions of this type of business, of these type of practices? It's shady. Sales is shady in every way, shape, or form. And when you put laws, especially pharmaceutical sales, but when you put laws trying to rein it back in, they just figure out new ways to be shady. Because let's fucking face it, unfettered capitalism is the root of all evil. People cannot be trusted to do the right thing when there's money involved. And there is so much money involved at every single level. The pharmaceutical companies that make these drugs are making billions, if not trillions. The doctors prescribing them are making millions. The people selling them illegally are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is a ton of money for them. You know, there's so much money on every single level that it is 100% corrupt. And now we see people who truly need them and can't get them.
Right.
Well, and when we're looking at the medical field, when we're looking at pharmaceutical companies and the health insurance industry, these are titans of our economy. They're not worried about being held accountable. And even though we're just starting to see it now, how many years has it been that they were able to get away with this? And before we were even able to recognize the opioid epidemic for what it is, it's like, of course they thought they were going to get away with it. We're only just seeing accountability now. And thank God for that. But whatever they end up being held accountable for, you know, in civil damages, it will be some kind of consolation to the people who were affected by it, but it's not going to bring them down.
No.
It's going to be a dent in their wallet. And I have a feeling that's going to be the extent of what this is.
I don't even think you could call it a dent in the wallet, because it takes 36 years or something like that to count from 1 to a billion. These companies make billions of dollars a day.
What I'm getting
out
from this
hundreds
article
of millions is nothing. It's pocket
Right.
change. Think about that statement. Hundreds of millions of dollars is pocket change to these companies. Break them up.
It appears to me that from this being the first time that the pharmaceutical company let it go to verdict, I feel like most of these people are probably just suing them, knowing that most of them will just settle because the money doesn't really matter to them. So I don't know if that's a foreshadowing of more people.
And those people, good for them. They get some sort of money. But like Abby said, it's not going to bring the people that died back. It's not going to change the trauma. It's not going to change the damage that it caused in so many families and so many lives. And no amount of money is going to be able to change that. But having it on record as them being at fault, that does say something. But again, we don't really have a choice as far as the medicine we take, right? It all comes from 4 major companies.
Right.
You know, we can choose between aspirin and ibuprofen, but they're made by the same fucking company. Right. We don't, as a consumer, we have zero choices. We don't have choices when it comes to our drugs. We don't have choices when it comes to our food. We don't have choices when it comes to the cable provider, right? We can't be like, Comcast sucks. I want Time Warner. Nope, not available. So you have very limited choices as a consumer. That is anti-capitalism.
That's monopolies, which are supposed to be illegal in this country. It's supposed to be.
And it's not. And breaking up the company so that it's 5 different companies under one person is not.
It's still a monopoly.
It's just 5 enormous companies owned by the same fucking people. All right, Leah, let's move on to your article.
Okay, so I chose a article about the shooting of Jessica Covington, a 32-year-old pregnant woman was unloading gifts from her baby shower on Saturday when she was shot in the head and stomach. The case has been dubbed by the police domestic in nature.
Mm.
So they have questioned someone. However, no charges have been filed as of yet. The shooting happened just after 8:30 p.m. on Saturday outside of Covington's home on the 6100 block of Palmetto Street. The mother-to-be was unloading gifts for her baby shower. Philadelphia police said she was shot in the head and the stomach, and her unborn baby and herself lost their lives at the hospital. Authorities said at least 11 gunshot wounds struck her abdomen. Also in this article, the killings are getting worse, it seems. Like, we're under siege here. We're under siege here, said twice by the Deputy Police Commissioner, Christine Coulter. That's what she told CBS 3 Saturday night. This killing comes as we are inching towards the homicide record. As of Sunday, which was 4 days ago now, there have been 496 homicides so far in 2001. That's a 13% increase in 2020. I'm sorry, 2021, not 2001. And then there's a quote here from the police commissioner, Danielle Outlaw. This is the statement on the city's growing homicide total as of Sunday night. This heinous crime has sent shockwaves throughout the country and also highlights the international lack of regard that we are seeing for humanity. And worse, all of this comes at a time when we are approaching another grim milestone. Soon we will reach and almost certainly surpass 500 homicides in our beautiful city. This unconscionable loss of life is almost too much to bear. On its own, 500 lives cut short is a staggering number. Whatever the final total, whatever this number can never truly show, there are thousands of other lives impacted by this sudden tragic loss. The Philadelphia Police Department will continue to work with our local, state, and federal partners and other stakeholders to get ahead of the violent crime that is plaguing our beautiful communities. So not only are, domestic assaults happening, and this case is going national, it's been all over the news. And it's a woman of color, which is interesting because usually it's not those cases that make national media. So I'm glad that this case is being presented to the public, but also the increase in crime in Philadelphia. The record was in the 1990s was 500 murders in 1 year. And this article was written on Monday. As of yesterday, we're at 499. We are one away from the record in the city of Philadelphia. And that's just the city. There are homicides happening all over the place now. Mm-hmm. Do you think that it has anything to do with COVID, or is this country just getting more violent due to our love of guns?
I tend to think it's a combination of the two. I think that COVID and the quarantine and the shutdown definitely escalated tensions. But I think that so much more of it is just like the whole socio-political climate that we're in right now. Like people are incredibly divided, tensions are incredibly high. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's kind of like a litmus test for, like, this situation in Philadelphia is a litmus test for just what's going on across the board, across the rest of the country.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree more.
It's interesting because overall crime across the country is down. Homicides are skyrocketing.
Right.
Which is just, it's interesting is not the right word. It's horrible. This particular case is just so sad. I don't know. I think, the love of guns has always been there. Mm-hmm. There's always mass shootings, which I don't know if they fall under the homicide, but even when you look at the number of mass shootings that continually seem to rise every year, it's still a small percentage of actual homicides, because homicides are generally a crime of passion. They're committed by somebody that you're close to. So I think people are truly getting to a desperate place, right? All we hear about is how great the economy is, right? The stock market's great. The jobs report is great. All this other stuff, but yet people can't get ahead. People can't, people are still having to choose between paying the rent and putting food on the table for their kids, right? The stress, being put on people, it pushes them to a breaking point. We've had this discussion before about violence, and we all agree that violence is not an acceptable answer. But you have to ask yourself: is at what point would I break? Because everybody does have a breaking point. And when you are desperate enough, you will do anything to relieve that desperation or that stress, that thing. And it turns into a horrible crime of passion. And those people should get everything that they deserve for doing it. But if we're truly looking to solve the problem, if we're truly looking to avoid these types of things, there's got to be some relief for people somewhere, mentally, physically. The demand life takes, right? To work 40 hours a week and not be able to put food on your table, that should be a crime, right? The company paying those people should be taken to court. It's truly amazing that the richest country in the world can't afford for every single one of its citizens to be able to eat, put food on the table, and be able to take a nice vacation with their family here. It's absolute insanity. If those three things were a possibility for everybody, the world, the country would look like a much different place. I'm telling you, it would look like a much different place.
Well, and the national economy, regardless of how that's doing, it is not a reflection of how people are doing financially across the entire country.
Right.
No.
And year after year, the divide between the richest people and the poorest people grows exponentially. And, especially with this pandemic, we saw Jeff Bezos and we saw Elon Musk. Their net worth was increasing by billions, if not tens of billions of dollars day after day. They'd have these huge fluctuations, and sometimes it would come down too, but it was like they were making billions of dollars. Meanwhile, there are people who can't get a job. There are people who are living in extreme poverty. And it's those cases that become this powder keg where people do become desperate. And that's when you see violent crime explode. And I think that is absolutely contributing to what we're seeing in Philadelphia and probably cities across the entire country.
And meanwhile, Abby, some people are lambasting poor people because they didn't save their $1,400 stimulus check or open a business with it or start something. Are you fucking kidding me? Jeff Bezos got a $300,000 loan, not even a loan, a gift from his parents to start Amazon.
Right,
If someone gave me $300,000, if I wasn't a complete moron, I could probably turn that into a business too.
Listen,
it's not that easy for everyone.
People need to stop talking about things that they don't understand. If you are living in extreme poverty and you are given $1,400, that will not change your situation. At best, you can get caught up on bills that you were far behind on. But honestly, if you're living in extreme poverty and you're deep in debt because you can't pay your bills, if I was more than $1,400 in debt, I wouldn't be trying to pay anything down because it wouldn't get me out of the situation I was already in. So if those people are spending it on groceries and spending it on goods and services that they need in the moment, of course, they're not going to be able to invest it. Greg and I think we've talked about it on the show before. We are, I would say, lower middle class, and we were able to save up enough money that I was able to invest in my own business. But it's not a Jeff Bezos business. It's a small home business. I am not raking in the money, but we were very blessed to be able to do that. Most people living in poverty would never be able to do that. It cost me $1,000 just to get my business licenses.
Wow.
That was the whole stimulus package. Okay.
Wow.
So do not speak ignorantly about people in poverty when you clearly do not understand the circumstances that they're in.
And I get the bootstraps thing, people. I get it. But two things here. One, let's stop pretending that Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, that they're bootstrap guys, because they're not. Donald Trump, none of them. They inherited money and then they use that, okay? And two, you have to have boots before you can pull up the straps. And we are talking about people that literally don't have boots.
Yes.
So it's a completely different conversation than what people want to have. And you're right, Abby. They don't understand it. You can't understand it unless you know it.
Yes.
The and again, I'll reiterate that because we kind of got away from the whole murder, the homicide thing. Desperation makes people do things that they wouldn't normally do. If you didn't know when your next meal was coming from, if you knew that you couldn't feed your kid, or it has been days since your family has eaten, what would you do? Would you go out there and would you rob a grocery store to feed them? I would. I'll admit it right here. If there was no other option, I would absolutely. Now, if I have to do that armed in order to get that food back to my family, sure. If that goes wrong, I could end up being a murderer. You don't know what you would possibly do. So is murder wrong? Of course it is. Is it the answer? No. Should these people go to jail? Absolutely. But
it's a reason, not an excuse.
Yeah,
it's a reason.
Do you actually want to bring the murder rate down, or do you just want to watch people burn for their crimes? Because I would say most of the people that are talking about this and talking about the people involved just want to watch them burn. They don't actually want to solve the problem, which is some sort of relief for people.
And this article is two separate things. It just so happens that this falls on Philadelphia about to break the record. No matter what the situation is here, if it is because he didn't think he could feed this, say it's the father, because that's my guess, right? If let's say his defense is that I was so broke I couldn't feed the baby, that does not give him a reason to shoot a pregnant woman the day of her baby shower.
No,
that's not what we're saying here either. So don't get that confused. This case is completely separate from what we're talking about. I'm sure this is going to turn into an icky, gross domestic case. That's what I think this is.
Absolutely.
What Jeff is talking about is totally separate.
Well, and maybe it is, maybe it's not, because, and again, this is not an excuse for what the person did, but maybe this couple, if they're a couple, are at each other's throats over financial stress, to the point where they hate each other so much, and this man hates and blames her so much that this is the way he chose to do it. Where if the financial stress wasn't there, maybe he doesn't snap. And I'm just assuming it's a he. Again, maybe he is a bad person at heart, and that's why he did this. But just maybe he's not. Maybe he snapped. Maybe something in him broke.
This is clearly a case of domestic violence, and I'm not with you at all right now, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm not either.
You don't murder. Listen, this reminds me of that horrible, horrible scene in Game of Thrones where they kill, I forget the character's name, at the Red Wedding and repeatedly stab her in her pregnant stomach.
Oh, yeah.
You do not shoot a woman and then shoot her in the stomach where she is carrying her unborn child because you're stressed out about money. That is domestic violence.
Let me rephrase this. This particular case, no, maybe not. This was pretty egregious. But are there murders that happen out there because of the stress and the constant fighting and the constant hatred that you build up towards each other over the constant? Is it premeditated? No. Is it? This seems to be kind of premeditated. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So all I'm saying, this particular case, maybe not. But are there cases out there that are murder cases, a result of the stresses of life?
Yes. And I think you're right there. I think that this high crime situation is a direct result of desperation. I think there you're 100% correct.
There's two things. I read something the other day where it's like, you know, you work 8 hours a day out of 24, and then someone's like, no. You don't work 8 hours a day out of 24. You work 8 hours a day out of 12 because you're sleeping or, you know, trying to get yourself up or driving to work the other hours. So you have 4 hours a day out of your life to enjoy it, because most people hate their fucking jobs. They're soul sucking. You're working for somebody else. They want you to work as hard as possible and pay you the least amount to do so. And if not, there's somebody else that will.
Those 4 hours are still working, right? Like you're still working. So
and then the other thing I saw, a friend of mine just posted, you know, she lives out in California. She bought her own house, which is an amazing feat out there to begin with. But she posted for her landlord that the house that she was living in is being rented now. I think it's a 2-bedroom. It's $4,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Who the fuck can afford $4,000 a month?
I think that's pretty low for California too. I just moved, and I was looking to rent before I moved to find a 3-bedroom place in Montgomery County. It was going to be about $3,000 a month. That was the minimum you're looking at for 3 bedrooms. And I have 3 kids, so obviously they would have had to double up. That's insanity. So you're right. I mean, I don't know how people live. I don't.
No, it's crazy. And then God forbid you have daycare costs on top of it. I mean, when both our kids were in daycare cost more than our mortgage and property taxes combined.
It's a virtual impossibility. All right, let's take a quick break. We will come back with our final segment.
You know why Mom and I brought you here, Brianna?
Now, Brianna!
So many years, Mom and I talked about
you act like the only option you have is to chain yourself up like a rabid animal.
About bringing you to a place where you could experience life as a kid.
They are right out past the streets.
That's not going to happen. And it's not fair.
The latest airborne mutation of the Lyssa virus, commonly known as rabies, has now wiped out nearly 40% of the world's population. There is no cure in sight. Society continues to break down. Riots, combined with unspeakable violent acts committed by people crazed by the virus, have completely overwhelmed police forces across this country.
Welcome back to the Ever-Evolving Truth. We hope that you enjoyed your Thanksgiving, because we just hit you with a dose of a bunch of really depressing news, as always. So we have Abby up next with her article. Then we're going to talk about the Ahmad Arbory case, which they just threw out a verdict this morning. And even though we haven't talked about it a lot on this show, we were planning on it. So we'll hit on it a little bit there. And then I have something about inflation. So go ahead, Abby.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep on trend and keep this whole episode real depressing. So there has been renewed interest in this case about this young woman named Crystal Kaiser. She is from the exact same area that Kyle Rittenhouse is from, Kenosha County. And her case is based around a self-defense defense strategy. So while the details of the case are different, there's a lot of striking similarities, and people are calling for the case to be revisited and re-examined because of what just happened with Kyle Rittenhouse's case.
So she was found guilty already.
She is awaiting trial.
She's awaiting trial. Okay.
Yes. I forget when they said they're going to come back to trial, but I'll get into that. So this young woman, she was originally from Kenosha, and at some point, you know, she grew up in the suburbs. I wouldn't say her family was necessarily affluent, but she had a comfortable life. At some point, her mom brought in this abusive boyfriend who abused the mother and her, and they ended up fleeing to Milwaukee and uprooting their entire life. And from that point on, they were living in poverty. So she found herself in this situation that she'd never been in before, where she was not sure when she would be able to get food or clothes or school supplies next because they had so little money. So now we have this young girl who's finding herself in a sense of desperation. And at 16 years old, she started selling herself on this website called Backpage.com. While doing this, she met this man named Randy Valor, who was 33 years old, and he started grooming her and giving her money, giving her gifts, giving her all the things that she was looking for because she had no money, no financial means. What ended up happening, and what this young woman is on trial for now, is going to this man's house, shooting him, killing him, and then burning the house down and fleeing the scene. The part of the story that is just horrific, and I'm so angry about it. I'm going to try not to get emotional. But 6 months prior to her shooting this man, there was another young woman who went to the police and said that this man, Valor, had threatened to kill her. Not Crystal Kaiser. This is a different woman. Mm-hmm. So the police went to investigate, and they found dozens of videos of Valor having sex with girls as young as 12 years old. And on top of that, they found hundreds of other videos of just child pornography, not involving himself. And this young woman who went to the police also gave them Crystal Kaiser's name, letting them know that she was being victimized by this man. So they arrested him, charged him with aggravated sexual assault of a minor, and let him go without bail. And then did not turn the case over to the district attorney for 3 months.
What?
Yes. So then, fast forward, Crystal Kaiser takes matters into her own hands, ends up shooting and killing this man, burning his house down, taking his car and fleeing the scene.
So this entire time, it was in the police's hands before she killed him.
And they did nothing. They did nothing other than charging him and collecting evidence. They just sat on the case and did nothing with it.
Oh my God.
Also during this time, there is evidence that Valor made a $500,000 deposit into his bank account, which they speculated that money came from trafficking out these young girls. And he would specifically go after young Black girls who were desperate because they were living in poverty, living in abusive situations, anyone that he would be able to prey on and manipulate. So initially, they were trying to use this law called the Affirmative Defense Law, which protects victims of trafficking from being prosecuted for crimes committed while being trafficked. Now, historically, that law was used to protect them against being charged with prostitution because they were acknowledging, like, you're being trafficked. You aren't making the decision to be selling yourself. Someone else is doing that to you. But they're saying, can't this also be used in this case, even though it's a murder trial? And that's historically not what this law has been used for. Clearly, there is a connection between the abuse she suffered and the crime she committed because she was being sex trafficked. So yeah, originally they had said that they weren't going to be allowed to use this law as defense, but that was appealed and it's being brought before the court again, and they're now allowed to use this law in their defense case.
How?
So
I don't understand how they're able to use that law in defense of, oh wait, never mind. Erase that. I'm sorry. My brain isn't working either. I was thinking prosecution. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. So the interesting thing is going to be, this will be a landmark case if she is proven to be not guilty based on this law, because it will protect other young girls going forward, who, the question of self-defense is like, was her life in danger? And I feel like, considering this other girl went to the authorities saying that he had threatened her life and that's why she was turning him in, I think it's clear that he was a dangerous man. And the fact, this goes back to the whole rape culture series we did. How can this man, who they have evidence to incriminate him, like, I know he was not on trial yet, but they had evidence of him having sex with girls as young as 12 years old. And even though he was arrested and charged, he was released without bail. They just let him walk free. Meanwhile, this girl, and she was a girl, she was 17 at the time that this happened, killed this man and was arrested and was held on $400,000 bail.
Oh my God.
And it's like, isn't the whole point of bail to make sure that if someone is a flight risk, that they won't be able to flee before they go on trial, or that they're a danger to society and won't be able to commit any more crimes? Clearly, this man was going to continue doing what he was doing. Meanwhile, this girl killed this man because he was victimizing and raping her. And there was no reason to believe she was going to go out and kill anyone else. She wasn't on a murderous rampage. She was killing this man who was selling her for sex to other men.
They re-victimize the victim.
Exactly.
In the criminal justice system. This is disgusting. This girl should have never been, I don't think she should have been arrested in the first place. She should have never been able to be in that house with her rapist once they knew that he was doing this. This is insanity.
Exactly.
This is insanity that she's even on trial.
Once it goes to trial and the defense and the prosecution make their case, I will be so upset if they find her guilty. But if they do, it should be time served, because she has already served years being held in prison, awaiting trial. And it's just, what was I going to say? Sorry, I'm going to mark this because I forgot what I was going to say.
I hate that.
I know.
Well, we talk about, crimes of passion. If under the law she committed a crime here, like, again, under so much stress, desperation, she did the only thing she thought she could do in order to relieve that desperation. And I don't think there's a single person you can find that could fault her for what she did. And there has to be some sort of discrepancy in the law for that. Well, this guy is a monster.
Yes.
A monster.
And
monsters don't deserve to be alive, and they don't deserve their day in court.
Well, I think everyone deserves their day in court. But when people went to the police to turn this man in and the police did nothing, that's when the criminal justice system and the legal system are not working for the public.
Yeah.
And what I was going to say when I lost my train of thought is, regardless of whether she's found guilty or not, and if she is found guilty, I think it should be time served and let the woman go at this point. She has paid more than her due. I think she absolutely should go after Kenosha County and the Kenosha Police Department for just gross negligence in not protecting her. They didn't protect her. They had all the evidence they needed. That man should have been held on bail. That case should have immediately gone over to the district attorney. She would have been safe at that point, and this would have never happened.
Yep.
They failed her.
I was wondering, the girl that went to the police and gave her name to the police, do you happen to know if she was a young black girl too? Were they all young black girls?
They didn't give any information on her, and that's probably just to protect her. But they did specifically say in the articles and news clips that I watched that he specifically targeted young Black girls.
So I'm not saying that this is a fact, but I wonder in Kenosha County if maybe that was why. I mean, we know that cases just that Black and brown people do not get treated the same way by the criminal justice system, and it's not as important. If it was a string of little blonde white girls, I think he would have been held on bail. That's my opinion.
I think there's a good chance that you're right about that. I think that race probably plays some part in this, but even more so than that, it's the poverty angle. It's these children, and then subsequently their families who have no power. They live in poverty, they live in desperation, and the system doesn't work for people like that.
No, it doesn't.
And it's so evident.
It works against them. I think it actively
yes.
works against them.
And there's something so repulsive to me that this woman is on trial now for murder, and that's being taken seriously. Not that murder shouldn't be taken seriously, but the fact that they had all this evidence that, like, there would have been no case to be had. Like, if this guy had gone before the courts with all of the evidence they had with him on videotape having sex with underage girls, and then just possession of child pornography in general, he would have been put away. But they didn't take it seriously because they don't take the sexual abuse of these poor young Black girls seriously.
They don't.
It's like they look at them as less than. And that is unacceptable.
And they could have been like, holy crap, we have a situation on here where we have to keep this Crystal person away from him so she doesn't do something like this.
Yeah, or
like that could have been like that.
Yeah.
No matter what, we have to do that, and then he'll get his day in court, whatever. But we got to keep them separated because this is a powder keg. You should be able to know that when you are faced with this type of trauma, anything, a person who wouldn't normally be capable of murder is capable of anything.
Well, also, there's no law that says that the cops couldn't sit outside of this guy's house. Why weren't they watching him until he was in trial? Why aren't they sitting out there making sure that there's not young kids walking in?
The fact that they didn't even turn the case over to the DA so that they could start the process of getting this guy on trial means they didn't think that this case was important enough.
Well, they're too
they
busy,
just sat on it.
Too busy pulling people over for speeding and drug busts and getting
Exactly.
people on marijuana. But
well, and then so the other thing too is in this Kyle Rittenhouse case, I keep seeing people say that it was a good thing that he shot and killed these people because they were pedophiles. And there is evidence that Joseph Rosenbaum, who was the first man shot, had a criminal history that involved sexual misconduct with minors, multiple counts. But you have these people celebrating the execution of these people who, in this situation, their crime had nothing to do with being a pedophile.
And also,
Kyle Rittenhouse
he's convicted, he already paid his debt, if you will.
his time.
He served his time and paid his debt.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's not a gross person, but...
Right. But so then we have this case where this girl killed her pedophile, her rapist, and the same people are saying, well, she made the choice to go on this website and she made the choice to go sell herself. And it's like, she was a child. And this was a grown man who preyed on her and groomed her to use her for his own benefit. And I don't understand where the mental disconnect is there, that like, why are you in favor of one and not the other?
And also Rittenhouse didn't know he was a pedophile when he shot him.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Karma happened to work out in that moment, but
yeah, good point, Matt.
And while I don't condone murder,
no.
This was absolutely karma.
There's a difference between murder and self-defense.
Yes.
This was self-defense in my
Yes.
opinion. Mhm.
Yes. And I'm considering the fact that the police did not do their job in this case. I am happy that she killed this man.
Yeah, me
Because
too.
if she hadn't, he would still be victimizing young girls.
Right.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm.
Do you have your clip ready, Leah?
I do.
All right. So this is from the
3 men who were involved in the fatal shooting of Ahmad Arbory. Without further ado, let's watch.
Turning Ahmad Arbory into a victim after the choices that he made does not reflect the reality of what brought Ahmad Arbory to Satilla Shores in his khaki shorts with no socks to cover his long, dirty toenails.
The 3 men who were...
If you listen, there's an audible gasp. You can hear someone go,
I can't
in the
believe
courtroom.
she thought that was a good thing to say.
Yeah, and this is not the first thing that defense team has done to try to make him look like a monster, a bad guy. They really, really tried to put him on trial, and they have made several comments. I have to pull them all, but there's at least 2 or 3 times where they were just blatantly racist. I'm sorry, like the things that they are saying are blatant. I also am very happy that all 3 men were convicted here, including Bryant, the McMichael father and son, and the third person, the Bryant guy, was actually, once the jury went into deliberation on Friday, he was trying to get his case severed because he knew he was screwed. That he didn't commit murder. However, he is the one that blocked his truck to keep this man from getting away from his would-be killers. So I think all 3 of them deserve exactly what they get. And if anybody tries to argue that this wasn't a fair trial, you are not paying attention.
I'm so happy that this was the verdict. Because, I made my feelings about the Kyle Rittenhouse case clear. I thought that it was correct for the jury to acquit him.
I agree.
But in this case, it was very clearly 3 men, well, 2 men at least, chasing someone down who they had no business going after. That was not their responsibility. It certainly was not self-defense. I don't know how you could even argue that.
They claim because they had things stolen off of a boat that was unlocked, and because he was looking around a house that wasn't built. I mean, this case, why it even went to trial, I don't know. I cannot figure out why the defense even went to trial because they were so clearly guilty of everything they did. Rittenhouse, completely different. I agree with Abby. I'm not happy that Rittenhouse was able to walk. However, according to the law, the jury did exactly what it was supposed to do. They followed the law to the letter. They did what they did. The law is the problem, not the case. And
the Arbory case went to trial because it was in Georgia, probably.
I was going to say that same thing, Mounts. They thought that they were going to get a jury that was going to be sympathetic of them.
And they had 11,
they did not.
11 white folks and 1 black person.
Yeah, and that clip that I played, I actually took from the Young Turks. And later in the episode, they start saying that they just need 1. And they're in Georgia. You know, they just need 1 person to be like, this black guy shouldn't have been where he was with his long, gross toenails. Like, I still want to know why the toenail thing, like, what made her say toenails? I still can't figure that out.
Because most people hate feet and find them disgusting, like myself. So
they thought Jeff was on the jury.
That would spark a reaction. Thank God it didn't.
I was reading so many things that people were saying about the Rittenhouse verdict that they clearly did not watch the actual trial, and it was an emotional reaction. I understand the emotional reaction, but people were really feeling like the system is rigged against minorities and it is in favor of white men, white people, affluent white people especially.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel
true.
I think it is true too. But I feel like if this case had gone differently and they had acquitted these 3 men, that would have been legitimate. It would have legitimized those feelings that the system is rigged against minorities. So I'm glad that Ahmad Arbery got justice, but I'm sad that he's not alive to see it.
Yeah. And I'm just waiting for the people to be like, the only reason they found him guilty is because this was a reaction to the Rittenhouse trial. Like, people are going to be saying that. No, they were 2 totally different cases. This has nothing to do with anything. They were wrong. And they committed murder and false imprisonment. That you cannot do that. You have to be right. If you're going to do a citizen's arrest, which that's another thing. Can we stop with that? Why is that still legal?
This was a citizen's execution. This wasn't even an attempt to...
It's a modern day lynching.
That's just it.
Modern day lynching.
There is such a problem in this country right now with police abusing their power and using lethal force or using just being too aggressive in general. And you now see it bleeding over into the public where they feel like they're justified to take the law into their own hands. And I'm glad this case turned out the way it did, because it's like, you don't have the authority to do that. And you absolutely have no business killing someone for touching property, stealing property, whatever the situation is. You as a private citizen have no business using lethal force unless your life is in immediate danger.
Well, in Georgia, I was watching a lawyer talking about it, and in Georgia they had this law where if they were right, if Ahmad Arbery had stolen something, their laws say that they would have been in the right to kill him.
They could hunt him down and kill him?
Not hunt him down, but then they would have, like, if he had committed a crime, they would have had the right to hold him there. And if he left, if he ran, they could have shot him and they would have gotten away with it. Ugh. The only reason they walked is because he didn't do anything wrong. They were wrong. But had they been right, a citizen's arrest would allow for all of that in the state of Georgia.
And see, there's another example where the problem is the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's the people in charge that are making those laws.
Exactly.
I don't have to point to which party I'm talking about. Let's switch gears here real quick. I want to talk about inflation because it's on everybody's mind, especially around the holidays. Biden aims to do what presidents often can't, beat inflation. I'm sorry to say he does not have much chance of doing this. My whole point of bringing this up is that the president doesn't really control inflation. There's no lever that they can pull. However, this is an issue for people. It's showing up on people's credit cards. It's showing up on their trying to buy gifts for their kids for Christmas and stuff like that. So it's a real issue, but we have to blame the right people, and we have to look at it in a different way than just whoever the president is, right? So Biden is doing everything he can for inflation, although it's going to yield very little results, especially early on. Confronting a spike in gasoline and other consumer prices that's bewildering American households, Biden on Tuesday ordered the release of 50 million barrels of oil from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, trying to flood the market with more supply so that the price goes down. The move, done in coordination with several other major nations, is intended to contain energy costs. Oil markets, having anticipated the move, were unimpressed, and oil prices actually rose. You going to blame Biden for that? Last month, he announced a deal to ease supply backlogs of the Port of Los Angeles by extending operations to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Probably should have been done a while ago. Here's Mark Zandi, an economist, saying, I don't think the president has many levers to pull to bring down the rate of inflation anytime soon. I'm sorry, he's a chief economist at Moody's Analytics. The things he is doing are positive, and there's no downside to them, but they are on the margins. They're not going to move the dial very much. What's behind the price spike? It's partly the consequence of very good news. The world economy, and America in particular, rebounded with unexpected speed and strength from last year's brief but intense recession. It was a result of super low interest rates, massive government spending, and eventually the broad rollout of vaccines that allowed more of the economy to reopen. The swiftness of the rebound caught businesses off guard. A year and a half ago, they were bracing for the worst, laying off workers, letting shelves and warehouses go bare, reducing investment and factory output. And energy companies did the same thing. They cut production of oil and gas as demand for transportation fuels plummeted. Once demand came roaring back, they were underprepared. As costs rose, many businesses found that they could pass the burden along to consumers in the form of higher prices. In the meantime, many families had banked their government relief checks and built up their savings. Some critics also blamed Biden's $1.9 trillion emergency aid package for overheating the economy and contributing to inflation pressures. The White House has limited tools for reversing higher prices. The task belongs more to the Fed, which can raise borrowing costs to a cool and sizzling economy. That's important because who was bitching the entire 4 years about interest rates being too high, trying to sabotage his presidency? Donald fucking Trump. What has Biden done? Biden last week has signed into law a $1 trillion public works program, which pours money into fixing roads, bridges, and ports, potentially easing the supply chain backlogs that have contributed to rising prices. Untangling shipping bottlenecks would be doubly helpful. It would ease inflationary pressures and boost the economy by increasing the flow of goods to customers. That's going to take years to see the benefits of that. Last week, Biden sent a letter to the Federal Trade Commission asking the FTC chair to consider investigating whether higher gasoline prices were the result of illegal conduct. The White House is also stepping up antitrust enforcement of the meatpacking industry, seeking to increase competition and drive down meat prices. The 50 million barrels that Biden promised to release will likely be sold slowly at a rate of about 1 million barrels per day, meaning that the new influx of oil could last about 2 months. Adding even a small amount of oil to the market can tip it into surplus and potentially lower the price. That's from Jim Burkhardt of IHS Market. So I wanted to talk about this at least briefly because we're coming up. I know it seems like Biden just got elected, and he did. But these terms seem to go by so quickly. Mm-hmm. And we are going to have a choice to make in 2022, and we're going to have to make a choice in 2024. And this always happens. Democrats get into power and have to clean up the mess made by Republicans. It's just a fact. Republicans destroy the economy by giving tax breaks to the richest people in the entire world. In this case, they did not take the pandemic seriously. Biden gets in, takes over an absolute mess. The economy recovers in some ways very quickly. Now they're saying too quickly. They would never say that about Trump if the economy recovered under him. And there's very little that he can do, yet his approval rating is in the tank, which when it's this low, it signals that we're going to get murdered in the midterms, which means there's going to be a bottleneck in Congress. No legislation is going to be passed to relieve any of this. And most likely, if the approval rating stays the same or lower, we're going to lose the presidential election, and it's going to undo all the positive things that are meant to relieve the situation that we're in now. And people need to be aware of this. Stop going to the gas pump and saying, oh, this is Biden's fault. It's not. This is affecting the entire world, not just America. It has nothing to do with the president of the United States. Global demand for oil is way higher than it was this time last year, and they're not producing nearly enough. Plain and simple, that's what controls gas prices at the pump.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly agree with you. The economy is in the situation that it is primarily because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And you can point fingers at either political party and how they handled certain things with the shutdowns, the quarantine, the economy. But if COVID hadn't happened, we wouldn't be in this situation right now. So trying to blame any one person is absolutely ridiculous.
You really don't think it would be, you think COVID had that much of an effect that we wouldn't even be in this situation? You think we would, the economy
I don't think we would be in the current economic situation that we are in right now. Mm-hmm. Might there have been some inflation? Absolutely. There's always some inflation. But we have these supply chain issues right now. The economy pretty much shut down for months back in 2020. Mm-hmm. And trying to get all the gears moving again, trying to fix the unemployment rate, trying to create jobs, which that is the one thing that you can point to Biden and say he did a good job with that, especially in the last couple of months. But COVID threw such a wrench into how the economy was doing that I feel like that is the biggest contributor for what we're seeing right now.
I think you're probably right. And really quick, just to Jeff, today an article came out that Biden's approval rating, according to NPR polls and another poll, one said 42%. That was NPR. According to Yahoo News, it's now at 44%, and it's gone up since his infrastructure bill. So that's a good sign.
That is a good sign. Yes, the infrastructure bill was widely popular, and will continue to do. But they have to roll it out and they have to execute it in order for it to help Democrats in the midterms. But I will push back. And it's not that I disagree necessarily with some of your points, Abby, but I can point to one person. Who was the one person who everybody listens to, who was on TV every single night, on Twitter every single day, claiming that the virus was a hoax, especially in the beginning? It was Donald Trump.
It was the president.
If we shut down for 2 weeks in February, when Fauci said we should have, it would have been much different. Much different. The virus cannot spread unless it comes into contact with people, right?
No, Jeff, I agree with you, but we're still talking about COVID.
Yeah, it's still because of COVID.
Did Trump horribly mishandle it? Absolutely. You get no argument from me about that. But we're still talking about the fact that COVID ran amok the economy. Trump has responsibility in that. Yes. But I'm saying if COVID hadn't happened, we would not be in this exact situation. That's all I'm saying.
I also, it's no way to say it, but with traditionally, when you give the rich a huge tax break and you can't pay for it, it throws the country into a recession.
Yeah.
So I believe it was coming anyway. But
that's what I meant when I was asking you. Like
one of the other things too that makes me crazy is the whole idea that like you have to spend money to make money, you have to make investments. That's something that you hear the Republicans talk about a lot.
Yeah.
This hatred of this $1.9 trillion infrastructure bill. Is that what the total was?
No, that's the one. That's the Build Back Better. That's going to be a reconciliation. This was a 1.2 trillion, I think.
1.2 trillion. People are so upset about that amount of money being spent, but it's all on things that we need and every single person in this country is going to benefit from. And it's also going to create jobs. You need people to build bridges and roads and airports. So it's an investment. It's not just frivolous spending. And I don't understand why more people aren't behind it. I don't think it should be criticized the way that it's being criticized.
No,
not at all.
All right, we will leave it on that. It's been a great episode. Again, when you're listening to this, you have already had Thanksgiving, so we hope it was wonderful. Nobody got into political discussions or whatever amongst their family this year. Hopefully, get it all out on our social media and listening to our show. For those of us on the panel here and those of us that couldn't make it, I hope you guys all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And remember, you're entitled to your own opinions. You're not entitled to your own facts. Fuck you.
People that are out shopping on Black Friday being mean to each other.
Thank you. That's a good one. Yeah, right. Black Friday should not be a thing. Fuck Black Friday. Fuck the companies that don't give their people a day off.